What do business brokers bring outside of a website listing? What fees do they charge, and who pays for these fees? I'm Malcolm Zoppi, an English qualified solicitor, and in this video, we'll discuss business brokers. We'll go over three main things. First, what are business brokers? What does their service typically include, and how do they get paid? Secondly, the advantages and disadvantages of using business brokers if you're a buyer. And lastly, the same if you're a seller. Fantastic, let's get started. So chapter 1 is what are business brokers and what do they do? In short, business brokers are people who find buyers for a seller of a business. Their services typically include marketing the business online and promoting it to relevant buyers. Second, they will advise the seller of the value and the list price for the business. Third, they would set up calls and vet potential buyers for that business. And lastly, and importantly, they will help to try and project manage the deal by keeping it moving as fast as possible. Fine, but how do business brokers get paid? Business brokers get paid in two main ways. Number one is upfront marketing fees. So when you, for example, as the seller of a business, instruct a business broker to find you a buyer, they would start by charging you money to market your business. Typically, that's because they would incur some kind of expense in marketing that business, regardless of whether it gets sold or not. And the second payment that they would receive is a commission based on and conditional on the business getting sold. Now, if you're a seller and you're speaking with business brokers, you might be aware of the fact that typically they would ask for exclusivity. So they want to be the sole exclusive broker for the sale of your business for a period of time. So in choosing which broker you want to proceed with, you might want to consider asking them what percentage of businesses that they take on actually get sold, say within 12 months of them being instructed on that sale. Fantastic. Let's move on to chapter 2, which is the advantages and disadvantages of using business brokers if you're a buyer. First, the advantages. The biggest advantage, of course, is that a buyer will be able to access the database of the broker, listing all these sellers or the businesses that are for sale that have, of course, willing sellers. This is as opposed to, for example, having to source your own deals and therefore having to create your own database of potential businesses. Second, the business broker would typically be quite familiar with the seller and know what is important to the seller. Accordingly, a business broker might be a good source of information when looking to structure your offer for the seller. They might be able to advise you on what kind of offer the seller is more likely to accept. And that doesn't only have to do with money. There might be other elements to the offer that are important to the seller. For example, how much is paid on completion, time period, the kind of security that we're giving, and so on. And the last main advantage is that brokers typically want to project manage and keep the deal moving forwards so that they get their commission. But it can also be good for you because project management, especially when it comes to complex acquisitions, typically is beneficial. Fantastic. Let's move on to the disadvantages of brokers for buyers. The main one is the fact that brokers represent the seller. Their client is the seller, and therefore they typically would have a conflict if you're looking for advice from them. Secondly, business brokers will want the sale price to be as high as possible. And that's because typically they make their money on a commission basis, and the commission is a percentage of the sale price. Therefore, the higher the sale price, the bigger their pay. And lastly, although they would help with project management, they also typically put a lot of time pressure, especially on the buyer. And for a buyer, time pressure isn't always the best thing to have. Now, before we discuss business brokers for sellers, feel free to email me if looking for professional legal advice. With our legal advice calls, there are no charges, no obligations, and no nonsense. Contact me now at info@zoppi.co.uk. Fantastic. So moving on to the last chapter, what are the advantages and disadvantages of business brokers for sellers? Starting with the advantages. One of the main advantages is that brokers would actually screen buyers. So they would spend the time setting up calls with potential buyers to try and vet them to understand whether these are serious buyers or not. They would also help coordinate meetings, arrange these meetings, and keep things quite structured. Secondly, as mentioned before, they have an interest in the selling price for your business to be as high as possible. And if they are successful in that, you get a higher sale price. Further, this can also be helped by the fact that, for example, if they are an established broker or they have a lot of connections, then they might invite multiple buyers to bid, for example, for your business. And if they're competing on giving you the best offer possible, then it might again lead to a higher sale price. And lastly, unless you have extensive experience or connections when it comes to selling businesses. If you're a seller, using a broker might increase the chances of you being successful in finding a suitable buyer. Of course, there are disadvantages as well. Firstly, brokers will want a quick sale as opposed to the best sale. Typically, brokers just want to get it sold, of course, for the highest price possible, but as soon as possible. They want to get their commission, and they definitely don't want to spend a lot of money and time marketing your business and for their exclusivity period to run out, and shortly after you go on and you find someone else as a potential buyer and they don't get their commission. Therefore, they want a quick sale, which doesn't always mean the best sale for you. Secondly, as is the case with any marketing agency, if we can call them, there are marketing fees that are guaranteed upfront. You must pay them in the vast majority of cases, but there are, of course, no guaranteed results. They cannot guarantee you that your business will be sold. And lastly, when you appoint a business broker, you're signing an exclusivity agreement that forces you to pay the business brokers if you find a buyer during the exclusivity period, regardless of how you found that buyer. Whether that buyer came through the business broker or is a friend of yours, you'll need to pay the broker. That's typically how the contract is worded. If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. I'll make sure to answer any questions that you may have. And if you're interested in finding out about the kind of taxes that you might need to end up paying when selling your business, make sure to watch this video right here. Thank you for watching.